Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on polar voyages with Discover the World. My name is William Gray. I'm a travel writer and photographer with a passion for wildlife and wild places. Leave me to sit quietly next to a penguin colony for a few hours, and I'm a very happy man. I've been working with Discover the World for over 25 years now, and it's my pleasure to be hosting this evening's virtual journey to the Arctic and Antarctica. In a moment, I'll be giving a short introduction to polar expedition voyages with Discover the World, giving you a taste of the exciting range of destinations, ships, itineraries, and activities that they offer. But first, let me just share my screen because we want to introduce our very special guests for this evening. I'm delighted to be welcoming Alex McNeil as our special guest in his role as Director of Expedition Experience and Innovation at leading polar operators, Quark Expeditions. Alex has attempted to redefine what modern exploration means, pioneering a new engagement ethos with remote communities and striking a balance between tourism growth and the environmental changes that we're surrounded by. Over the past decade, Alex has completed over 100 polar expeditions, including 14 to the geographic North Pole. He sailed on no less than 14 different expedition vessels and icebreakers, and has also undertaken trips by land and by air. Through his travels, Alex has developed a strong passion for the polar regions and the people who live and work in the Arctic and Antarctic. His work has involved creating Quark's exciting Greenland adventure itineraries and the extensive portfolio of helicopter activities offered on their new ship, the Ultramarine, which I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about later. Now, following Alex's presentation, we'll round off the evening with a question and answer session where we'll be joined by Joe Cooper. Now, Joe joined Discover the World over 2 decades ago and is now their senior tailor-made travel specialist with a wealth of experience and first-hand knowledge of polar regions and small ship expedition voyaging. Her travels have taken her, well, pretty much everywhere actually, but destinations like Iceland, Greenland, Spitsbergen, Antarctica, the Falklands, South Georgia, Canada, Alaska, all feature. Joe ranks being surrounded by thousands of king penguins and elephant seals on South Georgia as one of her top 5 travel experiences, along with seeing a polar bear on a beach right next to her Zodiac in Spitsbergen. So we'll be hearing from Joe a little later on when we have our question and answer session. A very warm welcome to her and to Alex. I'm going to catch up with you a little bit later, but first, here's a short video we've made to get us all in the mood for exploring the amazing Arctic and Antarctic. So I should point out that for the question and answer session, please do send in your questions throughout the evening. You can use the chat on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll add them to the list of ones that we've already been sent in advance. So having just looked at that video, a question that many of you might be pondering this evening is, how do I choose between Antarctica and the Arctic? Well, first off, I guess you could make a couple of basic decisions, like, are you a penguin person, in which case Antarctica is obviously for you, or are you more of a polar bear fan when you'll need to head to the Arctic instead? But after that, it gets a little bit trickier, and you may well find that one polar voyage is never enough. Now, Discover the World have been offering voyages to the polar regions since 1984, when they launched their first holiday program, actually, under the banner of Arctic Experience. And their polar pedigree, I guess, is reflected in their logo very well. Of course, it's the Arctic tern shown here, this amazing little bird that's renowned for its epic annual migration from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again, a round trip of some 22,000 miles. With all those decades of experience behind them, Discover the World have developed and refined an unrivaled collection of small ship polar voyages. And not surprisingly, around Spitsbergen, circumnavigation of Svalbard's largest island, is one of their most popular. And this scene shows one of my favorite places, Magdalena Fjord on the northwest coast of Spitsbergen. It's an amazing place, riven by deep fjords with huge glaciers like that one you can see in the background there, glistening beneath snow-capped peaks. Spitsbergen is the realm of polar bears, walruses, Svalbard reindeer, Arctic fox, and many other Arctic species. Cruising past towering seabird cliffs and exploring shelter bays like that, you'll aim to reach prime polar bear habitat along the north and east coasts, as well as exploring by zodiac from the ship. There are lots of optional activities you can take part in, such as sea kayaking, like here, and even scuba diving. Equally tempting, though, is if you head south, down to the Antarctic, and combine this amazing Antarctic trio of the Falklands, South Georgia, shown here, and the Antarctic Peninsula. South Georgia is on my bucket list. I would love to go there. Rearing from the Southern Ocean in an arc of jagged peaks, it's home to 450,000 pairs of king penguins, as you can see here, transforming entire bays into these vast penguin huddles fluffed up with shaggy brown chicks at the height of the breeding season. It's without doubt one of nature's greatest spectacles. And of course, looking at this photograph, you can't help but ignore the rather large elephant seals lying across the beach there. So as well as all these king penguins, you have these incredible seals to observe as well. That's just one of the trio of destinations on that trip, though. You also get to visit the Falklands, which has incredible diversity of wildlife, everything from cliff-top albatrosses, like these beautiful black-browed albatrosses. And if you look carefully, there's a few rockhopper penguins nesting amongst them on the bottom right corner there. And also sandy beaches peppered with gentoo penguins, more elephant seals, and a great range of indigenous birds as well. The trip lasts anything from 18 to 23 nights, and your Ocean Odyssey also includes the Antarctic Peninsula, of course, where you can add to your tally of penguin species, taking it up to 8 if you're lucky, and try optional activities like sea kayaking and even camping out on the land here. Also in Antarctica, you could be one of the lucky few to venture to the remote Weddell Sea, where emperor penguins raise their young in isolated colonies on the sea ice. Discover the World's special voyages aboard Quark's Ultramarine aim to get you within range of the Snow Hill Island colony using the ship's onboard helicopters. I'm sure Alex will be telling us more about them in a second. Back up to the Arctic, what other options have you got? Well, how about navigating the Northwest Passage, the elusive route linking the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans via the Canadian high Arctic that defeated explorers for centuries, landing in places like this beachy island where the graves of some of those ill-fated early expeditions are found. Or you could follow in the wake of Viking settlers weaving through the fjords of Greenland, just as Eric the Red did back in AD 985. A voyage to the world's largest island also allows you to witness the timeless bond between the Inuit and their polar home. Or you could search inland for the shaggy prehistoric muskox, or photograph head-spinning scenery from the giant icebergs in Disco Bay to the towering cliffs in Scoresby Sund. All of these mouth-watering itineraries are on Discover the World's website. But it's not just the choice of itineraries that sets apart their polar voyage program. Thanks to their long-standing relationship with some of the best polar expedition companies, Discover the World also offer you a wide choice of expedition ships. As an independent tour operator with travel specialists who have first-hand experience of the ships and destinations, Discover the World are very well placed to offer you personalized, honest, and crucially, unbiased advice on the polar voyage that suits you best. They can match the best experience to each individual, no favoritism. You can trust them to choose the right operator for your once-in-a-lifetime voyage, navigate the range of cabins available, and help you choose which optional activities to add. And by booking with them, you'll receive complete financial security, no surcharges, which is really important, and an emergency backup 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Discover the World only use small vessels carrying a maximum of 200 passengers to minimize impact on the environment. And they range from the intimate 53 passenger Quest shown here to the modern ultramarine with its energy saving features. Rather than having a negative impact on the environment, responsible tourism to Antarctica and the Arctic can help raise awareness of the issues facing our planet. And I think visitors come away with an enhanced sense of the value of the natural world and become more aware of everyday life of ways to help preserve this legacy. As well as the exciting range of optional activities that we've mentioned, like sea kayaking and camping and snorkeling even, a polar voyage also offers you a chance to take part in citizen science, fun, interactive sessions where you can help with real-world scientific research. One day, for example, you might be surveying penguins or tracking the migratory behavior of whales. The next, you could be mapping cloud patterns or measuring ocean temperature in support of climate research. Discover the World picks its polar voyage partners carefully, working only with accredited operators dedicated to safe and environmentally responsible travel in the polar regions. Many of the ships they offer are either 100% climate compensated or feature innovative technology to increase energy efficiency or reduce pollution. Having operated the first whale watching trips in Iceland way back in 1993, they take wildlife conservation very seriously and follow codes for minimal disturbance. And as part of their commitment to conservation, they also recommend that clients offset their carbon emissions through the carbon balance scheme of the World Land Trust. Well, I hope that's just given you a little bit of background, a little bit of introduction, and set the scene for this evening, really, to the wide range of destination ships and itineraries and activities as optional activities that you can do with your polar voyage with Discover the World. Now, if you go to their website, you can also find out much more about all the trips they offer, and also about the special offers that are also available that I should mention now. For example, you can save up to 50% on selected voyages if you book before the 3rd of January, but book before the end of Wednesday this week. No pressure, that's the 14th of December. There's also an offer where you can get 2 berths for the price of 1 in the same cabin, plus free cabin upgrades. So well worth taking a look at Discover the World's website, which you can see at the bottom right of your screen there, and having a little look around. Now, to the main event of this evening. I'm delighted to welcome back Alex McNeil from Quark Expeditions, who'll be giving us an insight into what life is like on a polar expedition. Hi there, Alex. Great to see you from Toronto live, where you've also got snow like us. And Alex, I'm going to hand over to you now, and looking forward to hearing about your extensive experience in the Arctic and Antarctica.
Wonderful. Thanks, Will. You're a hard act to follow. Can you see my screen and hear me okay, Will?
We can hear you loud and clear, Alex.
Perfect. Well, I'll get started. I won't attempt to replicate Will's eloquence. I was kind of mesmerized there listening to him speak, and it's an honor to be here this evening. Thank you to Discover the World for having me. And it's a great pleasure to be able to speak about Quark Expeditions and some of our polar voyages, which we hope to inspire you to consider in your travel plans to come. To start things off, this is a photo that I'm actually quite proud of, because that's me standing there in this image. Coincidentally, I didn't place it there, and this is taken in September 2020, when I was running a reconnaissance expedition to the fjords of South Greenland, and we were doing some helicopter surveillance on new sites. So, despite the pandemic, we were still investing in optimizing our experiences that we offer people, and I think demonstrates the explorer mindset that we have at Quark. And that's what we hope to convey to those out there who are interested in the polar expedition. There's many companies to choose from, lots of great operators. Our kind of hallmark is that we're looking for people to share an experience with, to join our expedition teams and explore together further into the beautiful wilderness of the Arctic and Antarctic. A little bit about myself, as Will mentioned, my name is Alex. I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada. I understand many on the call might be calling in from the UK, or the Southeast UK in particular, which is where I spent my formative years. I lived in Weybridge, Surrey, until I was 6 years old, and then migrated on to the wilds of Canada, and have since lived and or worked in places like Argentina, Greenland, Russia, Australia, Mexico, and have spent quite a lot of time exploring the polar regions. For the first 10 years of my career with Quark, I was a guide and expedition leader in the field, and since around 2018, I joined the Quark management team, and took the philosophy that I had in the field, which was very much focused on optimizing experiences on a particular voyage or particular ship, and now have the great pleasure of doing that across our fleet. And my role is to essentially design the trips and experiences that we offer. So using the intimacy that I developed over the years in the field with the destinations and the people who travel with us, and putting that towards our corporate strategies, whether it's with regards to sustainability and local partnerships or trip optimization. So it's a great pleasure to be here with you to share some of those insights. I will say, I'm not a salesman. I'm not here to convince you of anything, and and I don't have that mindset, but I do have a great passion for these places, and have been really honored to have been able to share them with so many people over the years. So as Will kind of referred to, expedition cruising is very different than conventional cruising. And one of the things that we like to talk about at Quark is the customization that we're able to offer, both in our portfolio overall, and then in the experiences themselves. Unlike a cruise, expedition voyages are very much unscripted, meaning we don't necessarily know how the voyage is going to unfold until it starts, until our expedition teams are reading the weather and the ice, looking for opportunities with wildlife, and using relevant real-time information to guide decision-making. Yes, we have a plan A and plan B, plan C, and we've mapped out all of the known possibilities beforehand, but we don't allow those plans to restrict us from taking advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. Unlike cruises, which often have a fixed kind of itinerary and go port to port to port, when we leave our ports of embarkation, we're very much in the wilderness and use nature as our guide, and the decades of experience that our expedition team have to maximize the experience. A quick introduction on the Arctic and Antarctic overall. Antarctica, of course, is the great southern continent, located at the bottom of the Earth. 98% ice, and very much lives in our imaginations. It's quite difficult to conceive of what it's like to be there, and frankly, quite difficult to even try and convey that in images and storytelling. But I'll try to nonetheless. To me, when I think of the Antarctic Peninsula, I think of a blend, kind of outer-worldly beauty that's best characterized by this, immense alpine ascent, where you have Alp-like mountain features coming straight out of the sea, which are highlighted by ice formations, glaciers, and icebergs. And sometimes it's difficult to tell where the land starts and the ocean begins. You know, in this image of a Zodiac cruise, you can see the small boat there, the Zodiac, which is kind of core to expedition cruise operations in our excursion programs. And just behind it is actually an iceberg. That's not land. And of course, further on, you can see the mountains of the Antarctic Peninsula there in the backdrop. Now you have this, immense alpine environment, but you also have this incredible biological productivity. And on every kind of free outcrop of land near the biologically rich waters of the Antarctic Peninsula, you have this astounding influx of life in the summer months. And so it's guaranteed that you'll be surrounded by Adelie penguins, chinstrap penguins, gentoo penguins, seals, whales. There's just this abundance of life that can be quite surprising, especially for a place that, while beautiful, is comes across as being very inhospitable. And so it's kind of like the Alps meets the Serengeti, and it's a beautiful combination of those two elements. This is an overall map of the voyages that Quark offers in the Antarctic, all focused around the Antarctic Peninsula and the sub-Antarctic islands of the Falklands, I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, and South Georgia. And so I'd like to go through each of these destinations briefly, just to give you an overview. So the main event of all of these routes is the Antarctic Peninsula. And like I said, it's just an immensely beautiful place. And it's hard to describe what it's like to be there. I guess the best way to do it would to say it's a sensory overload, whether it's the sights of these tremendous mountains, whether it's the sounds of the calls of the penguins to their chicks in the early summer months, or the roar of a whale blow as a humpback whale exhales beside your boat, or the sublime silence and tranquility of the early evening when you can hear just the crackling of the ice, and when the winds died down, the kind of perfect stillness. In South Georgia, the best way to describe it is just by far, in my personal experience and from what I've heard from our travelers, just the most overwhelming wildlife experience. This is one of the penguin colonies of South Georgia, where you could literally stand on the peripheries of colonies of hundreds of thousands of these magnificent birds. And this is an image of the same location, just slightly adjusted. And you can see those small points of yellow parkas that put into perspective the context here. And I think this is emblematic of what I found to be one of the more moving experiences on these voyages, which is the opportunity to feel humbled by nature. Often, I'm sure many of us have become accustomed to feeling like we or our societies are in control of nature. But when you go to these faraway places and you're surrounded by hundreds of thousands of penguins, or dwarfed by mountains, or kind of deafened by the beautiful calls of these incredible birds, it really puts into perspective, just the majesty of the wild places of the earth that we are eventually inspired through these travels and others like it to protect and be more mindful of. And finally, the Falkland Islands. As Will said so eloquently, one of the greatest experiences there is to get up close and personal with albatross, like the black-browed albatross here. This image is taken on a place called West Point Island in the west of the side of the Falkland Islands. And you can get really up close and personal with these majestic birds. Albatross, wandering albatross in particular, have the largest wingspan of any bird in the world. And so being able to stand so close and just observe these birds interacting with each other, flying in on the ocean winds and landing perfectly, despite the immensity of their wingspan. They kind of fly in and just perch on these very small stoops, and you're able to stand there for many hours and just bask in the Falkland sunshine and enjoy that experience. Another experience in the Falklands that I really enjoy is visiting Stanley, the capital. And I visited a few British overseas territories, and I have to say that the Falklands stands out to me as kind of the most proud, the most patriotic of all. And going into one of the local pubs or taverns, you just see, in many cases, the walls are adorned with flags and regalia, and it's just such a lively place. And so to sit there, surrounded by the locals and enjoy a pint and a dish of fish and chips is a really special experience that is well complemented by the wilderness experiences once you get outside of the settlements. One element of the Antarctic, which some of you may have heard of, but it's important to mention, is this body of water that separates South America and the peninsula itself, which is called the Drake Passage. Now, there's a lot of legend that comes with this body of water, a lot of kind of rituals or stories from the days of intrepid explorers sailing across this body of water. And to be honest, it is unpredictable, and it is known at times for being quite rough. But on the other side, other times it can be very tranquil. So it's really all part of the experience. But for those who are concerned about open sea crossings, rest assured, I'd say a decent amount of times the Fear Drake Passage is actually referred to as the Drake Lake. And for those who prefer a more comfortable way of transiting to the Antarctic, we also offer expeditions that bring you there by plane, that don't sail across the Drake Passage, but fly in using one of these lovely jets and land at a Chilean Air Force base just at the top of the peninsula there in King George Island. Now to the Arctic, the other side of the world. And here's a representation of Quark's voyages around the Arctic. And let's start our introduction in Spitsbergen, which Will introduced very, very well, so I won't dwell on this. But as he mentioned, it's beautiful landscapes, and also very much known for the abundance of wildlife, including the polar bear. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Alex, this is a kind of a National Geographic photograph. This is not representative of reality. We're not going to be this close to polar bears, are we? And I'll say, you're probably right. This is a photo that's taken from the ship, looking down with a zoom lens, but not as far as you might think. And I'll say that experiences like this are possible. And here's an example of an image a few years ago. And while I say they're possible, are they common? Absolutely not. I'd say, to get in proximity to a bear similar to this would probably occur maybe 10-20% of voyages. But still, these opportunities are worth cherishing and worth seeking out. And on voyages, a lot of time is spent, our ships will go into the pack ice, which is the habitat of the polar bear, and seek out these animals. And while those extraordinarily intimate experiences are rare, on almost every voyage, certainly every voyage that I've been on in Svalbard, you will have the opportunity to see polar bears in their natural habitat. And this is very different. The sea ice is the realm of the polar bear. This is very different from going to Churchill and seeing bears from a tundra buggy, when they're kind of waiting for the sea ice to return. The thrill of the search is something that really energizes me, the team members on board. And when you do get those moments like the ones that I was showing just a few slides before, they're really exhilarating and kind of life-changing moments. More often than not, the polar bears are sightings are more like the image here on the left. And what we like to do is when we spot a bear, could be 400, 500. I've seen bears spotted at over 1 kilometer away, 400, 500 meters. And we just stop the ship and turn off the engines, and it's up to the bears to choose. And a lot of the time the bears will approach the ship out of curiosity, new smells, new sounds. And I think that's something that's really special about a voyage to Svalbard or Spitsbergen. There are more predictable wildlife experiences. The walrus here pictured on the right. are much more reliable. There's haul outs that are known throughout the archipelago, and favorite places for us and our teams to visit during visits. Moving along to the west, we have the massive island of Greenland. And I'm going to come back to Greenland for some itinerary specific insights. But this image to me really speaks to the wonder of Greenland. It's just, it's more temperate, and it's the immensity of the ice. The Greenland ice sheet is the second largest ice mass in the world, second only to that of the Antarctic continent. And so definitely the largest in the Northern Hemisphere. And you just have this wonderfully calm weather a lot more of the time. And you have these incredible experiences to just sit back and soak in the beauty of the landscapes, and also the Greenlandic culture, which I'll talk more about later. And finally, in Quark's Arctic portfolio, we have the Canadian Arctic. And the Canadian Arctic is a wonderful blend of wildlife and also culture. And in Greenland and Canada, Quark takes great pride in engaging in meaningful relationships and partnerships with the Inuit communities that are part of our itinerary. So it's a great combination of wilderness, wildlife, and culture when sailing with Quark on voyages to Greenland and Canada. So that's an overview of both destinations. Now I'm going to get into the details a bit and share some kind of personal insights and stories with you. At Quark, there are a lot of features that distinguish us from other polar expedition companies, but there's three in particular that resonate with me. And those are that we venture far beyond the ordinary, that we do what few will ever do, and we always are inspired to chart new adventures and look at ways to do things differently. And what empowers us to do things differently is the fleet that we have to enable these expeditions. So we have a fleet of small expedition vessels ranging from 128 to just under 200 guests. And these ships are all ice strengthened. They're well appointed. They've got ample deck space and are well provisioned with an expansive and experienced expedition team and a fleet of Zodiacs, and in the case of Ultramarine, 2 twin-engine helicopters to get us from the ship to shore. As Will kind of referenced, Ultramarine is our new flagship vessel. It just started sailing last year. I think that I was involved in meetings and design consultation in Ultramarine, feels like for about half a decade, and it's been so lovely to see this ship come to life. I've been responsible for leading the kind of deployment strategy for Ultramarine, developing itineraries and experiences that leverage the best out of this vessel, including the onboard amenities and the 2 helicopters that are kind of unprecedented anywhere else in the expedition cruise industry. The onboard features are very comfortable. And also the ship itself is kind of emblematic of our new focus on sustainability, with much greater fuel efficiency and other environmental features that are focused across our fleet, not just on Ultramarine. And one of the components of this that resonates most with me, or that I'm most focused on, is the partnership. So ensuring not only is our environmental footprint as small as it can be, but that our social sustainability is at the forefront of our mind. So leveraging Indigenous voices and storytelling, ensuring that our operations have appropriate economic and social benefits for sensitive remote communities is a big part of what motivates me personally in my role. In addition to the itineraries that we also have a robust selection of off-ship experiences. So these are adventures that you do when you leave the ship, and we're very proud at Quark to offer more off-ship experiences than any other polar expedition operator. And these experiences aim to take you deeper into the polar regions, so you can have more intimate experiences in smaller groups in destinations that few, if any, other companies can take you to. We have a range of included activities from helicopter-enabled activities such as flight seeing and an experience that takes you up to the Greenland ice sheet, to Zodiac cruises and hiking. And also, if you want, you're able to customize your experience with additional paid options ranging from kayaking, camping, mountain biking, stand-up paddleboarding. It's literally an a la carte menu for you to choose from to customize your experience to best suit your interests and curiosities. And some of these are more active, but some of these are very accessible for a wide range of people. And one of the things that I've seen that's really special is when multi-generational families travel together. So you have kind of parents, grandparents, and grandchildren who are able to go and use, infrastructure like the helicopters to fly to a summit and watch a sunset in Greenland over kind of an ice-choked fjord. And it's those sorts of things, being able to facilitate those experiences for families, that is really one of the things that I cherish most about the work that I've done in the field over the years. We have a fantastic expedition team. I mean, this is where I started in 2007. This is where I spent, 10 years of my career at Quark. And just, it's a great culture. And I mentioned at the beginning, explorers wanted. And our whole philosophy is exploring with people, using our experience and our enthusiasm to inspire and include and really kind of transcend the normal and go beyond together as a unified team. There are no butlers on Quark voyages. There are no rose petals in the bathtub. It's all about the destination, all about the experience, and our team are fantastic at delivering that. So, as Will said in the beginning, and as I reiterated in my introduction, my role is about innovation at Quark. So it's been a great pleasure, and I'm so happy to work for a company that empowers creativity. So as part of this, I'd love to share some of the voyages that I've developed with you, why they're so exciting, and I guess highlight the differentiation that Quark offers through our innovative portfolio. And I'll come back to these three kind of Quark strengths, which are part of what has inspired us, which is going beyond the ordinary, doing what few will ever do, and pioneering new adventures. From the beginning of Quark's history in 1991, we've been known to accomplish more polar firsts than any other operator. From the first company to circumnavigate Antarctica, the first company to go through the Northeast Passage along the northern coast of Russia in the early 90s, first company to offer hot air balloons at the North Pole, and a range of other activities, many of which I participated in during my time in the field. But through my time in my current role as Director of Expedition Experience and Innovation, I've had the great pleasure of developing a few signature programs, and it's wonderful to have the opportunity to share those with you here today. And I didn't necessarily order these in any preferential sequence, but definitely our Greenland Adventure product is one that stands closest to my heart. And this is a program that takes place in South Greenland, so slightly more temperate, but still, wonderfully polar. And it's just this contrast of scenery in this immensely diverse fjord system in South Greenland. And you can see here, this is a satellite image of the region, and you can just see what a labyrinth it is. And during this voyage, which is just over a week long, quite accessible from the UK, you'll have the opportunity to visit 3 distinct areas in South Greenland. The first being what we call the Wild East, then Arctic Patagonia, and finally the Westlands, which is where some of the most iconic Viking settlements were established many years ago. But before we talk about how special the Greenland Adventure program is, I want to talk a little bit about what a normal voyage looks like. So standard expedition voyage, and certainly with Quark Expeditions, you'll wake up, you'll have breakfast, you'll greet the day, so to speak. After breakfast, there'll be an excursion, come back for lunch on board. In the afternoon, you'll have another excursion. Now, this could be a range of Zodiac landings, Zodiac cruises. Potentially, you've signed up for one of our adventure activities. And so you'll go off into the wilderness in whichever group suits your fancy, and explore. Usually these excursions are anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on your level of interest and what's possible that day. Then you'll come back for a recap where we look back on the day of what we've accomplished. Our education team will speak to us about some of the academic aspects, and also we'll talk about the adventures to come the following day. Then we're privileged to have our hotel team cook a wonderful dinner, and usually in the evening, people gather in the lounge to celebrate the adventures of the day and decompress. Now, for Greenland Adventure, the approach we've taken is slightly different, where it's more akin to kind of an adventure lodge than an expedition ship, where people can design their own experiences with much more intimacy. And so there's a wider range of experiences, included and optional, that people can choose from on these Greenland Adventure voyages to really customize your experience. And so where conventional voyages will usually have the ship based in one area, and there might be maybe two options. Let's say you can go Zodiac cruising, or you could go Zodiac landing. On the Greenland Adventure voyages, there's a much wider selection, from heli hiking to camping, to Zodiac cruising, to kayaking, mountain biking, and much more. And this really allows us to take advantage of this incredible landscape in South Greenland. This is one experience that's included, which is the ice sheet experience. You can see in the background there that the immense Greenland ice sheet. And on one of the days, we offer as an included activity the ability to fly up via one of our 2 helicopters to the ice sheet and step out and enjoy this incredible landscape. Another included experience on our Greenland Adventure voyages in 2023 is our heli hiking program. So in small groups, you're flown up into the upper alpine areas, going much further than you ever could from a Zodiac landing, and immediately starting your adventure in kind of an upper alpine area where you get the most spectacular views. On this voyage, you could also choose to spend the night at a local camp, which is hosted by local partners, and this has fantastic food, storytelling, and it's a lovely ambiance deep in Passermit Fjord, one of the most iconic areas in South Greenland. What inspired this Greenland Adventure concept was 2 dimensions, really. One is, over the years, I've always felt a great affinity for our local partners, especially our Inuit partners in Greenland and Nunavut. So this is the most integrated cultural program that we have, with more touch points to get to know and to explore with local partners than any other Quark program. And also the concept of what I call transcendent access. This goes back to that kind of multi-generational family situation. I had the great privilege of traveling with my father to Greenland in 2018. And he enjoyed the voyage immensely. He was in his late 70s at the time. And I just thought, as we were preparing for the launch of Ultramarine, how meaningful it would be if he was able to get to the top of all of the mountains, be able to participate in all of the activities using, the great enabler of the helicopters. And so, while every Quark voyage is fantastic for multi-generational families, this one in particular allows the utmost access. So I just picture, this is taken in South Greenland again on that 2020 reconnaissance trip that we did. And so I just envision, a group of family members of different abilities or ages being able to stand and be equally inspired and kind of overwhelmed by the beauty of this region in South Greenland. So that's a voyage that has a particular place in my heart. Another one, which is coming up in November 2023, is a return to Snow Hill and the emperor penguin colony of the Weddell Sea. So this is an Antarctic voyage which sails from Ushuaia. It's a total of 14 days. And we'll be positioning ourselves deep in the Weddell Sea, and using Ultramarines helicopters to access the Snow Hill Emperor Penguin colony. And this is an experience like no other. Emperor penguins are by far kind of an ornithologist's pinnacle species. You know, they nest so deep in the sea ice that they're really difficult to access, and that's where the kind of transcendent access of the helicopters on board Ultramarine come into play. So being able to sit, you know, with these birds and their young, you know, the emperor penguin chicks you can see there, is an experience like none other. And so in November 2023, we'll be returning to Snow Hill for 2 voyages that allow unprecedented access to this, you know, amazing place. The third voyage on my list is what's called Canada's Remote Arctic, and this is an optimized voyage that takes you deeper into the Canadian Arctic than any other expedition program. And the Canadian Arctic is kind of a balance of wildlife and these like immensely wild and expansive landscapes. Now, I think I mentioned before the significance of the sea ice to Arctic wildlife, particularly polar bears. And this is a composite image showing the extent of sea ice late in the summer season, when the sea ice has receded to its minimum level. And one thing you may notice is that on Canada, on the Canadian side, because of the geography there, the sea ice lingers in the channels and bays a lot longer than anywhere else. By this time in the summer, the ice has receded quite far from the shorelines of Svalbard. But in Canada, you have this kind of preserved ecosystem, which makes for an immensely, you know, biologically rich habitat for all of the iconic species that one would look for in the Arctic. And so that's one of the things that's so emblematic for me about this voyage, is to be able to fly in and out of Resolute, which is kind of in the middle of the Canadian Arctic archipelago, and spend over a week exploring this area in a really optimized way. A lot of other voyages that visit the Canadian Arctic will start in Greenland and finish in Alaska, or start in Greenland and end in Canada, and you spend a lot of time at sea, you know, transiting into these destinations. Some of the longer voyages, the full Northwest Passage transits are, you know, 24, 28, 29 days. So when I say optimized, that's what I mean. Those voyages are great for people who have a lot of time, but these voyages are designed for people who want to make the most of their time and get into the thick of it right away. And this voyage, Canada's Remote Arctic, not only does it go right into the middle of the Canadian Arctic archipelago from the beginning, it also goes further north than any other expedition program, sailing through Hell Gate there between Ellesmere Island and Devon Island, and into a place called Norwegian Bay, and up to Axel Heiberg Island. And Axel Heiberg Island is probably one of the most seldom visited places in the Arctic overall. I've only been there once in the, you know, over a decade that I've been exploring the polar regions, and it left such a impression on me that when I came into my role, I thought that that's somewhere where I'd like to share with others. And it's got these unique glacial formations. It's got things like petrified ancient forests and really incredible concentrations of species like polar bears, Arctic wolves, caribou, and just a sense of going beyond you know, the regular routes of expedition voyages and being part of something special. On that voyage, another focus is Ellesmere Island. So Axel Heiberg and Ellesmere Island, both seldom visited, and just wonderful destinations. The next voyage to highlight is the Gems of West Greenland. And I know I share an affinity for Greenland in particular, and certainly West Greenland, with many at Discover the World. And this voyage is also an optimized departure. It's going to be sailing in summer of 2024. And similar to the Greenland Adventure departures, it kind of explores 3 different chapters, 3 different regions of Greenland's west coast. So it'll spend a few days in Umanak Fjord, then deep in the heart of Disco Bay, the iconic Disco Bay, and then coming down to Kikata, which is a little bit further south. So starting in Umanak Fjord, this is an image of Umanak Fjord, and actually Umanak Island, which is in certain profiles the shape of a heart. And here's an image from last summer when we were using Ultramarines helicopters to explore the area. And that kind of inspired us to put this trip into our portfolio, because most other expedition cruise companies will spend one day in Umanak Fjord. And so this allows people to go deeper into this really beautiful fjord, exploring places like Store Glacier, one of the fastest moving glaciers in Greenland and in fact in the world, and going deeper into Umanak Fjord than any other company. Then we have Disco Bay. Disco Bay is known for big ice, and this is the home of Ilulissat, where you could visit the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Jakobshavn Ice Fjord. Also lots of rich history and culture in Disco Bay. That's really fantastic. And then the last part of this is in Kikata, which is home to Inuit Tasusuasat, which is one of Greenland's most iconic lakes, where we lead a short hike up to this most picturesque place and are greeted by our local friends and partners who host kind of like a local picnic, really. They bring some supplies and some tea and cakes, and it's a really great immersive cultural experience, as well as a stunning view. And Kikata is also home to mysterious Eternity Fjord, which is the location of Greenland's highest mountain. And I stuck this one in here. This is actually not a voyage, but it's an experience, one that I'm really proud of, which is last summer, Quark became the first company to partner with Inuit chefs in our Tundra to Table program. And on select Arctic departures, people will have the opportunity to enjoy the culinary delights of Greenlandic and Inuit cuisine with our chefs Mickey and Peter, who are both Inuit from Greenland. And here's some examples of the beautiful products that they've put together. This was something that was really, really well received last year. You know, it's small, intimate groups, and after the 4-course meals, the chefs will come out and sit with the guests and talk about their stories and their lives. And in addition to being a culinary journey, it's also kind of a cultural and social one. So those are the things that resonate with me about Quark. You know, I've spoken about our expedition history, what we've accomplished to date, and there's many more adventures on the horizon. And I hope that our paths will cross and that you'll consider Quark and the polar regions as part of your future travel plans. And it's been a pleasure talking to you today and sharing some of my perspectives on that. Thank you.
Alex, thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic, totally captivating, and some of those photographs were just, well, they were just out of this world. I think they were. I mean, I get used to seeing lots of pictures of polar landscapes and the work I do, but some of those were utterly jaw-dropping. And I think your talk just perfectly captured the thrill, the beauty, and just the sense of wonder of these voyages. So thank you so much. I loved your Alps meet Serengeti phrase to describe Antarctica. I think that's absolutely perfect. And that Tundra to Table trip looks wonderful. I mean, you know, we think of a polar expedition, I guess, as going on a ship, but it's just so much more than cruising, isn't it? It's just so much more than cruising, and just the sheer range of adventure opportunities that you described there, particularly on the ultramarine, was a real eye-opener. So, wow, thank you so much. I hope you all found that as inspiring as I did. I know many of you have been sending in questions, so thank you very much for that. And I'd like to welcome back Joe Cooper, travel specialist and polar expert from Discover the World. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Join us for our question and answer session. Just to sort of kick things off, Joe, perhaps I could come to you first, and just to ask maybe a bit more about your most memorable experience on a polar voyage you've been on.
Yeah, I was having a think about that, because there's so many amazing things that I've kind of seen out in the Arctic and Antarctica. But I think one of the most unique things was actually seeing an emperor penguin when we weren't supposed to. It was kind of November time, and yeah, we'd gone for a walk and we were looking at all the colonies, and then there was all this chatter on the radios and people getting excited, and we were like, what's going on? What's going on? They were like, go down there, go down there. And we followed everybody, and then there was just this one lonely emperor penguin just sitting there. And it was obviously a youngster. He didn't have like his bright yellow chest or anything. But yeah, he was just sitting there all on his own. So all the snow was coming down, and it was just incredible. So we all just stood around watching him, and yeah, poor little thing. We were like, are you lost? Shouldn't be there.
Amazing, amazing. Alex, how about you? Have you got one standout experience that comes to mind?
Oh, it's so many to choose from, but one that sticks out for me is I was in Scoresby Sun, East Greenland in 2016, and I was the expedition leader of a ship that was about 100 people, and talking about this unscripted nature, I thought, I've been to this place. We're deep in the fjord complex in a place called Rode Fjord, which means red fjord in Danish, and the landscape there is this kind of oxidized iron in the soil, so that the hillsides are kind of red, and you have these glaciers and ice. And I said, it would be amazing to explore this area at sunrise, which is about 5 or 6 a.m. So I said to the guests, don't expect everyone to participate in this, but if you are interested, please join me and a few other staff at kind of 6 a.m. and we'll go ashore before breakfast. And 20 people, I think, signed up because they were super keen. And we managed to get to this hill just as the sun came over the horizon. And it was like the redness was accentuated, and the blue of the ice was like lit from within, and just the intimacy of that small group at that time of day was something that will always stick with me.
Wow, both those sound amazing. I'll chip in my favorite polar moment. I think it has to be cruising into Magdalena Fjord on the northwest coast of Spitsbergen, and I was on a two-masted sailing schooner under full sail. It was 24-hour daylight. It was the middle of summer. We'd had sunshine for about 5 days solid, 24 hours a day, and it was just the peace and tranquility of it. We heard the song of beluga whales actually echoing through the hull of the ship. It was so quiet, and we glimpsed the polar bear in the distance. And moments like that just stay with you for life, don't they? And Joe, I wonder if I could come back to you now with all the choices available that we've talked about. I mean, Alex has widened our repertoire of polar expedition cruises with that talk there. These incredible destinations, these amazing ships, all the things you can do. Where do you start? If it's your first time considering a polar voyage, where do you possibly begin getting your head around what you should do and where you should go?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I went to Antarctica for the first time back in 2012, and that just absolutely blew my mind. There's nothing that kind of compares to it. And also South Georgia as well was just like absolutely incredible. But I think it's kind of hard. Like if you go to Antarctica first and then you go to the Arctic, it's hard to kind of then compare, because with Antarctica, you are literally surrounded by wildlife everywhere you go, thousands of penguins and everything like that. With the Arctic, it could be like one polar bear in the distance. It could be, a couple of walruses. You might see a couple of reindeers, maybe a few whales. It's very much about the scenery in the Arctic. So I think if you've never done one before, it's probably good to do the Arctic first. Get a taster, because also it's a shorter distance to travel to, so slightly lower cost. But it gives you that highlight of kind of being on a ship, seeing what it's all about. You can just do one, for a week, get that taster, but it's completely addictive. So once you've done one, you just want to go back. And when I did Antarctica, it was just literally Antarctica, and everybody was like, oh, you've got to go to South Georgia, you've got to do Falklands. And then I think it must have been about 6 years or something later, finally got there, and it was like being in a David Attenborough program. That's how I describe South Georgia. Literally, like behind you is example of what it's like. You're just surrounded by thousands and thousands of king penguins. I've never seen anything like it. I probably never will again. It's just such an amazing experience. So yeah, I think Arctic's a good place to start. Get your taster, see what it's like, and then you want to go back, definitely.
That's really good advice. Brilliant. Thanks, Joe. We've had lots of interesting questions in from viewers. I'm going to start going through them now. Alex, here's one from Justin, who wants to know what's there to do on the ships, during your days at sea and the downtime. We've talked a lot about all the adventure activities by Zodiac, helicopter, and so on. But inevitably, there are, these are remote places. You might have to spend a day, even 2 days at sea. What is there to do on the ships during those periods?
Yeah, so it depends what region you're in, but it's an amazing question. I'd say that a big focus is our education program. So throughout the sea days, there'll be presentations from kind of world leading experts on biology and history, things to provide context for when you start with your excursion program when you arrive to the destination. The other thing that really kind of goes under the radar is the amount of wildlife that you can see when you're in transit. So for example, the best time to see albatross on any Antarctic voyage is at sea. So we have these workshops where you go out on the back deck and these majestic birds are kind of following the ship. And, some of them are soaring, just 10, 15 feet from the edge of the railing. And so you're there with the ornithologist. So those are big highlights. There's some great amenities on the ship. Some of them have spas. There's some great gyms so people can, get energized and make sure they're staying active in preparation for those hikes. And then, if you're in the Arctic, like you pointed out, Will, that tundra to table program is fantastic. So that's another culinary option as well.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you, Alex. Joe, back to you. Sandy asks, is a trip to Antarctica feasible if you have limited mobility? For example, is there an alternative way to reach Antarctica without having a long, rough sea journey across Strait?
Well, I believe Alex said about like their flights and things, but it really depends, what their capabilities are, whether, if it's like actually in a wheelchair and things, it's going to be very difficult because if you're, if you're doing crossings and things, you've got to be able to hold on. Some ships will have lifts. So, if you do have limited mobility, then you could use the lifts and things. But yeah, you do have to be fairly, kind of active to kind of get in and out of the zodiacs and those kind of things. So yeah, it's kind of, it will depend on kind of capabilities and things. But obviously we would always try and help people, kind of depending on what their, requirements are, then we would always try the best and also then make sure that they're on the right ship for them. Because, there's certain ships that I've been on where there's no lifts, there's like a ton of stairs, so kind of, and especially if you're doing the Drake Passage and things, trying to hold on to, railings and things, it can be very difficult. So yeah, it depends on the situation.
Okay, thanks, Joe. What about on the ultramarine, Alex, with the helicopters that you were talking about, taking children up to remote places in Greenland? Would that be a thing that people with limited mobility could access?
Definitely, yeah. And just to add on to what Joe was saying, it's like don't count yourself out. You'd be surprised how accessible these voyages can be. I mean, Quark has the highest staff to guest ratio in the industry, so there's lots of people on hand to help you. If you have significant, mobility issues, it also depends on who you're traveling with. Your travel companion can also be a big help. But helicopters are definitely provide the most access because you're not kind of getting onto a moving boat. The helicopter is on a deck and it flies and lands on the shore, and you're immediately in the place of greatest interest. And Antarctica is great because you can just stay in the Zodiac. You can do a Zodiac cruise and not have to get out and climb up to a summit to have an amazing experience. You're there and surrounded by wildlife and icebergs. And so, yeah, I'd say don't be deterred by the level of activity that you might perceive from these presentations. There's something for everyone, and definitely working with a great agency like Discover the World with experts like Joe will help find something that's right for you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. Question coming in just now tonight. Do the cruises cater for vegetarians? Alex, do you want to take that one?
Certainly. Yeah. As a vegetarian myself, I could say that the vegetarian food is fantastic. Yeah. No, all dietary and culinary requirements and preferences are catered for, and we have some fantastic hotel teams. And so, yeah, definitely, there's a lot of vegetarian options and some very good ones. We've come a long way. When I started in the industry, 15 years ago, the options were limited, but I can definitely say in the last 5 years, things have accelerated immensely in the food options. And so vegetarians do not have to be concerned. You'll be well taken care of. And that's the other advantage on these small ships is you'll get to know the chef, you'll get to know the maitre d', the hotel manager. They'll spot you when you walk in the door and say, Mr. Alex, come over here. We've got a special dish for you. And so you just feel that kind of personal approach on these smaller ships.
I've got to ask you, Alex, what is on the menu on the tundra to table?
Well, it's interesting you say the tundra to table is it's not a vegetarian experience because it highlights Inuit cuisine. So it's also not kind of a frontier program where we're taking kind of Inuit fusion with other cultural kind of culinary things. So a lot of the ingredients are fish. You know, we got like snow crab and halibut, also muskox and caribou, some fowl species. We leave the more exotic ingredients for the community-based experiences. So we're not talking about seal and whale or anything like that. It's a very accessible program, and kind of we use it as an opportunity to share cultural and, you know, the cultural exchanges that the Inuit people have had for many years. So there's influences from Danish cuisine, from, you know, sometimes they're doing things that are infused with Asian flavors as well, but very much rooted in local ingredients and local produce.
That sounds fascinating, and yeah, just underlines how the cultural side of things comes into those Arctic trips. Incredible. Let's move on to another question. Sabi has asked us which areas have the best chance to see the Northern Lights. So I guess perhaps come to both of you on this. Joe, do you want to take this first? But we're looking at, I don't know, late August, early September in Greenland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd have to look at some of the voyages that are a bit later. One of my examples was that I did, unfortunately, we don't do it anymore now. I think it was a Quark trip where it was Churchill, and you started there. And literally the first day, we got on the boat and there were belugas everywhere. And then that night, the Northern Lights came out, and it was just like, wow. And so yeah, literally, you know, if you're in the right area, the right time, obviously you're in the middle of nowhere, complete wilderness, remoteness. There's no artificial lights, nothing like that. So yeah, we literally were looking up at the sky, and I sat there. They had like the deck chairs outside, and I just kind of sat there with the blanket on, just staring up. And I looked around about an hour later, and everybody had gone to bed, and I was like, "Where's everybody gone? This is the Northern Lights." And then people were a bit blasé. They were like, "Oh, it'll come out another night," and it didn't. So you know, you've got to grab those opportunities. If they say, even if it's midnight, you know, you're in your pajamas, you're in bed, whatever, you go out and you look. So yeah, you, as long as you're, you know, in that season, so kind of like August onwards, but obviously a lot of the voyages to the Arctic do finish around kind of September, but any of those later ones, you definitely, you know, do have the chance of seeing them. Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Joe. Alex, do you want to add anything to that? Northern Lights potential?
I do, actually, because Joe's just jogged my memories. That's the voyage that we were on together, because I remember that day with the beluga and the Northern Lights. But I also wanted to make a kind of a special announcement, a sneak peek from my role as kind of the designer of these programs is in 2024, we're going to be re-releasing the Greenland Adventure voyages and moving them from July, which is also a great time of year, to September. And one of the main reasons for that optimization is incorporating Northern Lights. So in South Greenland in September, there's an incredible opportunity for that. So keep your eyes peeled in the new year for when that hits the market. And we have existing programs, like we have Under the Northern Lights, which is a departure to East Greenland in September, and our later season departures in, you know, the Canadian Arctic, West Greenland in 23 are also great options for Northern Lights.
Wow, so you've just given us even more choice.
Yeah,
that sounds fantastic. Definitely one to consider. Here's a practical question from Simon. One for you, Joe, maybe. He says he's 190 centimeters tall, very specific information here, 115 kilos, size 13 feet. Would there be expedition clothing on board to fit? Perhaps you can just tell us about what is provided. You don't need to sort of go out and kit yourself out in polar gear, do you?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, Alex might know more about kind of the actual kind of kit, but you kind of get your jacket provided and your boots. If it is specific things that, you know, kind of like shoe size that you think might be, you know, might not have that size or something, then it might be worth taking your own. But basically, with Quark, we generally kind of take, you know, sizes of jackets and sizes of boots, just so they kind of roughly know then on board, you know, how many they'll need of kind of each things. But they have like a wide selection, and with the boots as well, like I have on about 3 pairs of socks generally, so I'm usually a size bigger than I would normally go. But yeah, so they generally have like a wide variety of shoe sizes and jacket sizes and things. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Alex, you're not going to get cold, are you? Basically, that's
no. On Quark voyages, we include waterproof boots. They're actually very high-end neoprene muck boots. and an expedition parka that people get to keep. And we're very lucky at Quark. We have a range of guests who join us from all different parts of the world, from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Europe, North America. And anyway, from my time on the ship, I can attest that we have large XL, double XL, triple XL, and quadruple XL in jackets. So I'm sure Simon will be well taken care of. And 13 is not the largest shoe size I've seen. I think we've got up to 14 or even 15. But like Joe said, make sure you submit that information. You know, our operations team works very closely with agencies like Discover the World. So we'll definitely make sure you're accommodated.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. So there you go, Simon. If you're listening, you're going to be well taken care of. So don't worry about that. We're getting some great questions in. Sandy has asked just now, how busy are the waters in Alaska and Antarctica? Will there be lots of other boats in the same location? Alex, do you want to go for that one first?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think when people think about expedition cruising, Alaska is one of the things that comes to mind, but Alaska is more of a conventional cruising destination. So for example, none of the Quark voyages go to Alaska, and only a few expedition cruise operators go there. I've never been there personally, so I'm not going to talk about Alaska. I'll say in Antarctica, there's a wonderful system. We all collaborate with each other to ensure that we preserve the wilderness experience. So there's a lot of coordination between vessels that takes place related to kind of environmental sensitivity, to make sure we're not over visiting certain areas, but also to coordinate that we're not overlapping with each other. So in the Antarctic Peninsula, even in kind of December, which is kind of peak season, you might see another ship in the distance when you're transiting, but you have to look pretty hard, and you're not going to be sharing landing sites with other vessels. And it's the same in the Arctic. You know, in some communities, you might be there when another vessel's there, certainly the larger ones like Nuuk or Ilulissat. But those communities are you know, a few thousand people, and they're well established to handle multiple ships at the same time. But when you're in the wilderness areas, you know, in almost 200 voyages, I don't think I've ever shown up somewhere and there's been another ship there, where there's a lot of coordination and support that occurs behind the scenes to preserve that wilderness experience.
Yeah, and I back that up as well. On all my voyages, I've never seen any other ships. Like, you know, in Ushuaia, in the ports, you'll see a ship there, but never ever seen any others. And that's why they're so special, that you can literally, you know, you go out to these remote areas and it's just you, just the scenery and the wildlife, and the remoteness is just incredible.
And I guess, Joe, it's a good point to come back to now that, you know, these ships, these expedition ships, you know, maximum 200 passengers, and you're not sort of inundating these fragile coastlines environments with thousands of people. You know, if your vision of a cruise is 5,000 passenger ship, that is not what we're talking about here, is it? And that's a very important thing to
yeah. Exactly. And in Antarctica, they have a limit of 100 people at any one landing site. So if you're on a ship that's over 100, they'll split you into groups, or people will be doing different activities. So, you know, you're doing a landing and it could only be, you know, 20, 50 people, whatever it is, you know, you're in an even smaller group then. So you're still not with the whole capacity of the ship. You're not all in the same area together. And in Antarctica, you can obviously kind of walk off on your own as well. So you could literally be sitting there with the penguins. I've done that before, where, you know, in South Georgia, I'd just be like watching one penguin for like half an hour and then go, oh no, I haven't been anywhere else. I need to like carry on walking. So, you know, you get totally distracted. But yeah, you feel very special kind of being in those areas.
Amazing. Let's talk about these penguin encounters, because you see pictures of people, and these penguins, you know, are literally I guess there are regulations that you can't approach penguins, but if you sit quietly and they come,
they don't know the rules.
That's okay. They don't know the rules. That happens a lot with them.
They haven't been told them. Yeah, I mean, my first trip to Antarctica, we were just literally sitting down, you know, watching them, and they were just coming straight up to us. And then I was walking around, I suddenly looked down and there was a penguin chewing my Wellington. And you just look down, you're like, what are you doing? So yeah, they don't know what these rules are. We're staying away from them, and they just, you know, come right up to you, and they're all friendly. And I also had it was a baby elephant seal in South Georgia, and it was like a puppy. I had like a walking pole, and he was just coming up following me, and I was trying to move the pole away, and he kept following the pole. And I was like, no, you can't come with me. You need to stay here. So yeah, they, you know, the wildlife does what they want to do, as long as you're not, you know, going close to them, especially to the adult elephant seals. You definitely don't want to be going near them. There's definitely regulations with them, stay well back.
Yeah, well, I think as Alex so clearly and well showed in his talk, respect for the wildlife, the environment, and the culture is foremost in the minds of companies like Quark. So thanks, Joe. Another question is coming from Penny just now. Can you cater for single travelers? Alex, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, we definitely can. And I think these trips are very well suited for independent travelers, because there's a community on board. The ships are small enough that you meet a lot of people, and you're sharing meals, and you don't kind of get lost in the crowd. And so there are, first of all, a lot of people who travel independently, and there's also just kind of an openness. I guess a good way to describe it is it takes a particular type of traveler to have an interest in these sorts of trips. So already there's this like-mindedness and camaraderie, a spirit of adventure that draws people together. And so I've seen some great friendships come up on board the ship. And also, the expedition team are there on Quark voyages. Every meal, the expedition team join in with the guests, so you get to know the expedition team, and there's just a great spirit of camaraderie. It's a hard thing to capture and describe, certainly in a presentation like this, but it's a big part of these voyages, is the people you share the experience with. And yeah, by all means, it's great for independent travelers as well.
Great, thank you, Alex.
I've been on my own every time, and it's actually the best thing to do, because you have to make an effort to talk to people. And yeah, you share these absolutely incredible experiences. And a couple of the people I met on my Antarctica trip, I went to their wedding and I'm godmother to their child. So, you form these bonds with these people, and there's nothing, we still talk about it all these years later. It's one of those things that it's absolutely amazing. And if you are a single traveler, if you're willing to share, they have like triple cabins and quad cabins, twin cabins. So you can keep the cost down as well. If you do want to have the single occupancy, obviously there will be a surcharge for that, but there's the option there. People, and the thing is, everybody is like-minded. They love wildlife, they love scenery, they love photography, everything like that. So if you are sharing with somebody, generally, you're going to get on well with them, because you've got the same interests and passion and things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. Thanks, Joe. Richard has just messaged us. He wants to know, this is a good one. Given the unpredictable weather, what are the risks of flight cancellations if you're taking a Drake Passage flight option?
Yeah.
Who's
going to answer that question?
Go for it. You Alex, you
I jumped in there.
That's good.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Actually, part of my portfolio now is managing our flight operations, so it's well suited for me. And yeah, it's a very good question. There is a risk, and what happens is there's kind of a weather window, and if the weather is unsuitable for flight operations, the pilots and the airline will delay by 6 or 12 hours to reassess. It's very, very rare that the flight is unable to proceed to deliver on the commitments of the voyage. Sometimes there's delays. Off the top of my head, I would say statistically you're looking at low single digits for full cancellations. Like you just can't make it. And in that case, Quark has special protections for travelers to accommodate that. I'd say maybe 30% of the time there's some form of delay. So maybe you're scheduled to fly at 9 a.m. and you have to wait until noon or 1 p.m. I mean, that's kind of par for the course. And we're talking specifically about the Antarctic fly-ins. This is not for the voyages that include transfer packages, flights from Helsinki to Longyearbyen or from Iceland to Greenland. So yeah, for those Antarctic flights, I'd say 30% are delayed, but that leaves 70 something percent, 60, high 60s, low 70% just go as planned. We actually just started our fly-in operations. First 2 flights went off exactly as scheduled, and as I'm kind of suggesting, the large majority do so. But it's something to consider when planning, that there is a risk that you could be slightly delayed, but usually it's minimal. Yeah,
and I guess, Joe, the very nature of these of all polar expedition voyages is that you are going to somewhere remote, and it's unpredictable, it's exciting, it's as you said, Alex, you have a plan A, plan B, plan C, but men might end up with plan F. depending on the weather and ice conditions. And I guess that's part of the fun and the excitement, is it, Jo?
Oh yeah, definitely.
What was
Yeah,
your-
it's kind
what
of
was your
having that
experience?
open-mindedness, really, that yeah, you just don't know what's going to happen, what wildlife you're going to see, what the weather's going to be like. You could wake up in the morning, it could be completely misty, and you can see like nothing, and then an hour later, you know, that mist is then all magical because the sun's coming through, it's all on the mountains, and you know, everything, you know, every day is completely different. You have no idea what's going to happen. We had like 3 days of pure blue sky sunshine, and then yeah, the last day was snowing, but then we saw the penguins in the snow, you know, and it's, yeah, you just have to basically know that anything and everything could happen out there in either place.
Brilliant. Gosh, well, I think our time is almost up. It's gone by so quickly. Thank you everyone for all your questions. Those of you who sent them in advance of this evening's virtual journey to the poles, polar regions, and those who have been messaging us this evening. If we haven't got round to answering your question, we will follow up with an email with further information to make sure that it is answered eventually. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening. I hope you found it useful for planning your polar expedition voyage. Whether you're thinking at late availability for Antarctica this season, we're right in the middle of it now, but there's still availability. If you're fast and you jump on those special offers on the Discover the World website, little plug for that again. Or maybe you're planning a voyage to the Arctic for next summer, when the pack ice retreats from the shores of Spitsbergen and the ships are up in the north there, sailing around that beautiful coastline there. Or maybe you're looking further ahead to the Antarctic 23-24 season. Whatever you're doing, please don't forget there's lots more information on the Discover the World website. Take advantage of those special offers if you like. The best way forward, I think, really is to give one of their travel specialists like Jo a call by phone, or arrange a Zoom meeting, or pop into the offices in Dorking in Surrey. Discover the World are based there now. There really is nothing better than a face-to-face conversation, sitting down with an expert who's actually been there. And as you've heard from Jo this evening, she can give you that passion and that first-hand experience, from the cabins to sitting with penguins and everything in between. So there really isn't anything better than that. These are seriously special trips, aren't they? And you really want to get them right. We know they're not cheap. They're very special, once-in-a-lifetime trips. So do make sure you talk to the experts like Jo. A massive thank you to you, Alex, for joining us all the way from Toronto this evening. I'm sure I'm not alone in finding your talk absolutely spellbinding. Thank you so much, and best of luck with your endeavours in the Arctic and Antarctica. And thank you to both Alex and Jo for your brilliant words of wisdom in the question and answer session. So all it remains for me to say is a special thank you to all our viewers for joining us this evening. Keep safe, happy travels. I suppose I should say happy Christmas. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Goodbye.